Okay, a very good morning. Now we will continue to the introduction to crime scene investigation part 2. Okay, we already learned previously on the crime scene, and we already learned about what is locus exchange principle. Okay, what affects the locus exchange principle. We already learned about the trace evidence, direct, circumstantial, physical, and biological evidence. I hope you guys be able to understand all these objective. If you guys have any kind of question, you may ask through the WhatsApp group so we can relay the information to everybody else. So we have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objectives, including the types of professional at crime scene, how to secure the crime scene, how to uh, have a very good documentation for crimes investigation, and then we will learn about the collecting and packaging of trace evidence, and at the end we will learn about the chain of custody. All right. Okay, before we going further, actually there is something we left separated with the objective number 3. Actually, it's supposedly under objective number 3, which is the use of physical evidence or the function of physical evidence. Physical evidence have several roles, and the first one is to prove if a crime has been committed or not. Okay, let's say in this kind of example, in the forensic investigator of fire case, you recover a burnt carpet remnants. Upon the analyzing, the gasoline was found present on the carpet remnant and the fingerprint were discovered on a bottle located 50 meters from the crime scene. So, at the fire investigation, you took the sample of the carpet remnants. And then at the crime scene as well, you found a bottle containing gasoline. And so, it's kind of suspicious. Where is the gasoline come from in contact with the carpet? So someone must starting the fire. So the incident can be due to the fault play, or maybe it is an accident. So it can lead you to somewhere. Okay, for example, you can lead to the suspect or to the perpetrator. Okay, so the function of the physical evidence is one to prove if a crime has been committed. Okay. Okay, in another kind of scenario, for example, you found a lying man on the street with some wound on his head. Okay. Around at the surrounding, suddenly you found something, the blunt object that with the stain of blood on the object. So the evidence can cease to suggest that the crime has been committed. That is one of the function of physical evidence. Yes, of course, the physical evidence can be concealed by the perpetrator, but if the physical evidence can be found, it can assist that the crime has been committed. Okay, the next function of physical evidence is linking a suspect with a victim and a crime scene. For example, here, okay, a suspect denied of raping a girl at the victim's home. Okay, a suspect he's denied that he actually raped a girl at the victim's home. However, the DNA analysis revealed that his pubic hair was around the pubic area of the victim, and animal furs recovered from the suspect's trousers were also consistent with the victim's cat. So in this situation, okay, the suspect denied that he actually raped the person, the woman. So during the investigation, okay, you found some of the foreign pubic hair from the pubic area of the victim. During the analysis, you found the DNA of the suspect. Second thing first, okay, the second thing, you found the animal furs over there. You found the animal furs on the suspect trousers. Actually, the animal furs belong to the victim's cats. So it's linked the suspect with the victim and the crime scene, even though the suspect is actually denying he actually did the raping, but the evidence shows otherwise. Okay, this shows that the suspect come into contact with the victim. Okay, this is the main function, one of the main function of the physical evidence, to link a suspect. Okay, without linking a suspect to the victim or a crime scene, we cannot somehow convict the suspect in court. Okay, that is one of very important function of the physical evidence. If you cannot prove link of the suspect to the victim and the crime scene, you cannot convict the suspect. Okay, the third the third application of physical evidence is to free or to exonerate the innocent. Okay, in this case example here, Calvin Willis was released after being imprisoned for 21 years for a crime he did not commit. The DNA test revealed that he was not the rapist of a minor which was wrongly convicted in 1981. In 1981, the DNA test is still not applicable in the 1981. Before 1990s, the conviction relies more on the eyewitness or fingerprint. So the wrong conviction caused him to be imprisoned for 21 years old. But after the analysis of the physical evidence revealed that the DNA from the victim is not belong to him. So this one kind of the physical evidence that purposely to free or exonerate the innocent. So we need to keep in mind that the evidence is not just to convict the suspect. Okay, the evidence can also exonerate the innocent. Okay. Okay, number 4 is to center victim's accusation. Okay, in the example, a woman claimed that she was raped, okay, by that kind of guy. Okay, for example, the person was raped by somebody. Okay, but somebody deny that he actually raped the woman. But after the analysis, the DNA match with the victims. So the DNA analysis strengthens the victim's accusation. The evidence help to prove the victim's accusation. So this is another function of physical evidence. Okay, the next function of physical evidence is seizing the arguments. In as example, in the false insurance claim, a guy claimed that he was robbed. However, forensic analysis show otherwise. They cannot find any evidence of breaking. So let's say for example, I'm a bad guy. I want to make a false insurance claim. I fake a break-in. I broke the windows from inside. Okay, I'm just stupid enough, so I broke the windows from inside. So what happened is the fragments of the glass break somehow was found outside of my house. So instead of, if in the a normal robbery situation when somebody else broke inside your house, supposedly the fragment of glass should be inside your house. So by doing this, for example, the insurance party can somehow deny the false insurance claim made by me. So this is one kind of function of the physical evidence, is to seize the arguments. Okay, so that's it about the function of physical evidence. Okay, it's actually kind of the common question can be appeared in your test or your final examination, but the marks will not be that great. Maybe if the question asks you about state, so you can just state the function of physical evidence. So if the question asks you to explain the function of physical evidence in seizing the argument, so you need to somehow explain and give the example how physical evidence can seize the argument. That's kind of the function of physical evidence can be asked during the examination. Okay, the next one we will learn about the detection of a crime scene. So how a crime can be detected? The first is that the crime can be detected via a police report by a victim. So let's say you are a victim of a crime. You have been robbed, so you come to the police station and you make a report. So that is the first how is the crime can be detected. The next one, a police report by a witness. Okay, let's say there is some murder case. So the victim has been killed. It is impossible for the victims can go to the police station and make a report. So that is where is the situation where the witness encountered the incident can somehow make a police report. Okay. The next one is directly encountered by police. Either it is incidental or stages. For example, in kind of situation, okay, in a murder case where the victim has been killed, there is no witness. Suddenly, somebody just passed around and somehow smelled a rotten smell. So he called the police, and police found the body of the victim. So that is kind of the incidental encountered by police. How about stages? The stages, for example, that's for a bombing cases. Okay, let's say for example, the bombing cases after the first incident, the 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 perpetrator give the clue to the police about the second bombing place. So when the police found the second bombing place prior to the bombing incident, so we call that as the stages encountered by a police. Okay, this is the three kind of crime detection. First, by the victim. Second, encountered by a witness. And the third one, encountered by police itself. Okay, the next one we will learn about the types of professional at the crime scene. Okay, who should be on the crime scene? Okay, the first one is the police officers. Of course, we need police officers at the crime scene. Okay, the police officers can act as the first responder. Okay, this involving the first responder and investigating officers and also their team. Okay, the first responder is the first officer that arrived at the crime scene. Can be the investigating officer. Okay, so it's not necessarily if the first responder is the investigating officer. It can either be the first responder is the first responder and he called the other investigating officer. Or maybe in some way, the first responder come to the crime scene is the investigating officer. It can be both way. Either the first responder is the IO itself, or the first responder is only to secure the crime scene, then he called the investigating officer. Okay. Then the next police officers is the Csi Team Leader and his teams. In Malaysia, Csi Team Leaders and his team is a part of police officers. Okay, but in some kind of other countries, they separated the Csi team from the police department. Okay, in Malaysia, the Csi team is included in the police department. But in some of other countries like US, they separated the Csi team from the police department. Okay, the next one we will learn about the types of professional available at the crime scene. Okay, who should be at the crime scene? Okay, the first thing is police officers. The first police officers that reach at the crime scene we call as the first responder. The first responder can be the investigating officer or can be in the separated, it can be different officers. Let's say, for example, I am the first responder, but I am not the investigating officer. So I will call back to the police station to have the assigned investigating officer for that particular case. Okay, so it can be that first responder is the police investigating officer, or the first responder is not the police officer, but he called the respective investigating officer for that case. So, okay, the next one we have the Csi Team Leader and his team. Okay, in Malaysia, Csi Team Leader and his team is a part of the police department. Okay, it's not necessarily the similar with the Malaysia. As example, in US, they have mixed the CSI team of the police officers and also civilians. In UK, United Kingdom, of example, they actually the CSI team is made of civilians, trained civilians. Okay, so it's not actually same with the every country. Okay, in Malaysia is a different style. Okay, maybe in Firas or Hassan country, they have different styles. So CSIT might be part of the police officer, might be not. So okay, the next type of professionals is scientific specialists. For example, we have here forensic pathologists, forensic anthropologists, and forensic entomologists. They are experts of their field. The function of the scientific specialist is to advise in terms of the sample collection. Okay, for example, the CSI team is not specially assigned for that particular special case. For example, you have the case of involving the anthropologist. You have found multiple kind of skulls, so you actually not be able to differentiate between the human or animal skulls. So you don't know how to collect properly the sample. So you need the advice from anthropologists. For example, you found the bodies he found the body with already rotten, already under bad decomposition. So you call the entomologist to get their advice how to collect the sample or how to preserve the sample, or maybe you call them to how to collect and preserve the sample. Okay. In some of the situation, you need to call the pathologist. Need to confirm either the victim is need to have the presence of pathologist to confirm the death of the victim. So that is kind of forensic specialist can be invited at the crime scene. Okay, the next type of professionals is district attorney. This district attorney can be also present in certain case. Okay, mostly in the high profile cases or also in the serious cases when the presence of the district attorney is required. Okay, but it's not necessarily for every cases. Same goes to the scientific specialist. For every cases, the important officers or the important professionals is the first responder and investigator officer, and also the CSI team, the crime scene investigation team. Alright. The next one, we will learn about the responsibilities of the professionals. Okay, the first thing here, we will learn about responsibilities of the first responder or investigating officers. Remember, you may become a police officer in the future. Maybe, if not in the future, in the final examination, you need to perform a crime scene investigation. Okay, so you need to understand the responsibilities of the first officers. The first thing you need to do to conduct a hot search if the criminal is still at the crime scene. It means that immediately after you reach the crime scene, you need to somehow aware if the criminal is still there or not. If the criminal is still at the crime scene, probably the crime scene is too dangerous for you to perform your assistance or to provide your assistance. That's why you need to perform the hot search to secure the crime scene, to ensure the safety of the crime scene. Then, after you conduct your hot search to ensure there is no criminal at the crime scene, and then you pretty sure that the crime scene is safe from the criminal, so you can provide the assistance of to the victim if the victim is injured or the assistance is required. And then if the victim is injured, you need to call the paramedics. If the victim is dead, you need to call for the pathologist to come and verify his or her death. The next one, to protect the crime scene by cordoning and safeguarding the area for restricting the access. After you came, you already performed the hot search and you provide the assistance to the victim. It is required that you need to, as soon as possible, to protect the crime scene. You need to cordon the area and the safeguarding the area for restricting access. You cannot allow any civilians to come into contact with the crime scene. Even you must not allow everybody else except for the investigating officers and his team and also the CSI teams to come into contact with the crime scene. You cannot allow even if the person is the president of the Malaysia or the president of the United States or the president of the earth. You cannot allow unless they are the part of the CSI investigation team or investigating officer team. And then after you pass the crime scene to the CSI teams, you need to conduct a cold search. What is cold search? Cold search, you need to find the information surrounding of the crime scene. So you need to find people over there. You need to interview the people over there and find if there is some possibility if there is a witness during the crime. Okay, so you need to interview the people. For example, there is a crime of murder. You need to interview the neighbor. Okay, you need to know what is the recent activities of the victim from the neighbor. Maybe you need to ask neighbor, did you know the victim well? What was the last time you seen her, for example? That is kind of the question you need to interview the neighbor or the people in the surrounding. It is more better if you can find the witness. And then during the call search as well, you need to secure, if you can secure direct evidence such as CCTV or dashcam recording. Okay, that is kind of responsibilities need to be conducted of the first responder or investigating officer at the crime scene. Okay, at the crime scene only. I'm talking about the crime scene. If you're investigating officer to investigate the whole case, so there's other lengthy procedure. But right now, we just discuss the responsibilities during the crime scene investigation only. Okay. Again, one of the responsibilities to protect the crime scene by coordinating and safeguarding, and you need to initiate investigation by calling the CSI team. Okay, if the forensic expert is required, you need to call them as well. So it's actually a lot. Okay, and here is the responsibilities of the investigating officers other than on the crime scene. Is that you need to locate and interrogate the suspects. You need to obtain the remand if necessary. You need to deliver to the exhibit to appropriate experts. For example, the crime scene is already handed over from the CSI to the IO. So you need to handle the exhibits and distribute to the appropriate expert. For example, you have the DNA evidence. You need to send to the department that can handle DNA. If, for example, the analysis required from the chemistry department, so you need to deliver exhibits to the appropriate experts. For example, if the victims required to be a postmortem, so you need to approach the pathologist. Okay. The next one, you need to collect all relevant reports and exhibits written by the experts. After the evidence has been analyzed, the other kind of the analysts, they should make a report. Then this is your responsibility of the investigating officer to collect all the reports and the exhibits through a very good chain of custody. Then you need to prepare the investigation paper. Then to produce all the exhibits and reports to the court. And finally, you need to provide testimony in court. Okay, here is the responsibilities of the investigating officers outside of the perimeter of the crime scene. Okay, so we have the responsibility of the investigating officers at the crime scene and outside of the crime scene. So don't get confused. Okay. Okay, the next one we will learn about the responsibilities of the CSI team leader. What you should do if you are the CSI team leader. CSI team leader is the one who control the crime scene after it has been handed over to the CSI team leader by the investigating officer. After the IO already passed the crime scene to you, so it's under your responsibilities. So let's look what is the responsibilities of the CSI team leader. The first thing is to conduct the preliminary survey along with the IO. When you arrive at the crime scene, you need to come together with the IO to conduct the preliminary survey. Okay, what is preliminary survey? You and the IO enter the crime scene. Maybe you can just bring together the photographers, and then at the preliminary survey, you grasp the basic situation of the crime scene. Okay, you get the information of the crime scene. For example, investigating officer is already there. Investigating officer during the preliminary survey, it should assist you, for example, to locate the what we call visible evidence. Maybe the IO will somehow during the preliminary survey, it will tell the CSI team leader, here is the victim, here is the evidence, here is the what we call the potential evidence, and so forth and so on. Okay, that is the first responsibility of the CSI team leader, to conduct a preliminary survey. The next one is signing all documentations pertaining to accepting and returning the crime scene. Okay, after the preliminary survey, then the IO will release the crime scene to the CSI team leader. So the responsibility of the CSI team leader to sign the documentation that accepting of the crime scene and also returning the crime scene. Because at the end of the crime scene investigation done by the CSI team, the crime need to be handed over to the IO. Okay, so you need to sign the documentation to for that return over of the crime scene as well. Again, after the conducting of preliminary survey, then the IO will pass to you the crime scene. So you need to sign the documentation that you accept the crime scene. After everything is finished, then again you need to sign the documentation that it said that the crime scene is already handed over back to the investigating officer. The next one, briefing about the case to the his team and the delegating task. Okay, after you done the preliminary survey, you sign the documentation of accepting the crime scene, and then you need to somehow plan the idea and brief the case to your team and delegating the task. For example, okay, after you receive the information from the investigating officer, and then you pass the information to your team, and then you need to delegate the task. Okay, for example, you assign the person A to secure the crime scene, for example, or maybe you ask the first person to somehow secure the evidence or secure the apparatus. Maybe you ask the person to sketch, maybe you ask the person to photograph. Okay, you need to delegating the task. Okay, the next one, you need to decide on the search pattern. Okay, you need to decide on search pattern. We actually have a few kinds of search patterns. We will learn about the search pattern after this, but you need to decide on search pattern depending on the size of the crime scene, depending on the location of the crime scene. For example, if the location of the crime scene in a small room, you need to use a very different search pattern compared to the crime scene happen at the outside area or at the open area. So you need to decide a very good search pattern. You need to maintain and ensuring the accuracy of the administrative log. This means that you need to ensure the accuracy of the administrative log. Who handle this particular task? Who handle this particular evidence? Okay, you need to ensure the accuracy. You need to ensure as well the accuracy of the evidence. For example, the number of the For example, you found that kind of particular evidence. You need to ensure that that particular evidence have their number. For example, you found the knife. You need to ensure the accuracy. The knife number is number 1. For example, you need to ensure the accuracy and the consistency of the administrative log. And then you need to provide the narrative description. Okay, what is narrative description? The narrative description is the description about the crime scene. For example, is the crime scene windy? Either it's hot, either it's raining. And then you need to tell about the condition of the crime scene. Is it outside, or is it indoor, or it is outdoor? How small it is, how large it is, where is the location of the victims, what kind of the evidence you have found. Okay, you need to provide a very detailed narrative description. For example, you need to tell, okay, now the day is windy, the temperature is about 33 degrees Celsius. The crime scene is located at T05, level 3, in a room number C10 13813. Okay, and then very detailed. You need to go very detailed. The room condition is like is not dark. There is light turned on. Okay, the victim is laid on the right side of the right corner of the room. You need to somehow provide a very narrative description. Maybe you can also mention that, okay, the victims wear what kind of purple color. For example, the victim wears a blue color shirt, blah 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 blah, and blah blah blah. So you need to provide a very detailed narrative description. From the naked eyes can be seen that a few kind of evidence are found, blah blah and blah 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 and blah 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 blah. Okay, that's right. Together with me, a few kind of the officers, blah 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 and blah 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 blah. Okay, you need to provide a very good narrative description. Narrative description, it can be recorded, it can be written as well. Then one of the other responsibilities is to make the final decision making on exhibit collection, packaging and preservation. For example, your staff, okay, is not well trained, so you need to assist her how to collect the evidence, how to package the evidence, how to preserve the evidence. You need to advise her. If, for example, your staff have the problem to know how to exhibit and packaging and preservation, so you need to have that kind of knowledge to give the final decision to her. Okay, that is the responsibilities of the Csi team leader. Okay, next we will learn about the responsibilities of the Csi photographer and sketcher. Okay, let's look about the photographer. Photographer needs to photograph the scenes and exhibits. So not only the photographer needs to photograph the exhibits, photographer needs to photograph the surrounding as instructed by the Csi team leader. Usually, what you need to do as the photographers, you need to take a picture of the surrounding area of the crime scene, where actually your vehicle came from, and then you need to focus until it reach the crime scene. At the crime scene, then only you can picture the exhibits. You can take the photograph of exhibits, and also anything instructed by the Csi team leader. Okay, the normal practice is when you during the crime scene, you arrive at the crime scene, you take the photographer of surrounding, and then you follow the CSI team leader enter the crime scene for the preliminary survey. During that, you need to take the preliminary pictures of the surrounding from outside of the crime scene and from the center of the crime scene. Okay, we will learn about that in the documentation of the crime scene. Then, of course, photographer need to provide the photographs. And finally, you need to prepare the photography log for the record. Okay. For the photography log, it must be accurate. Okay. For example, that particular number, DSC 1301, the evidence is pistol gun. So you need to very accurate. Okay, you cannot somehow suddenly DSC 1301 suddenly you say that is a pistol, then suddenly when you presented in court, they open the exhibits, blah blah blah, blah, the evidence of that particular number is not pistol gun, it's the other kind of exhibits. So it will be somehow challenge the integrity of yours as the photograph. So you need to provide a very accurate log record. We have the tips and tricks actually how to provide a very accurate photography log. We will learn about that later on. The next one is sketcher. Of course, the sketcher need to prepare the sketch, need to documenting items on sketch. Okay, you need to prepare sketch, you need to documenting items the sketch. The sketch must be understand standalone lah. So the sketch must be descriptive, even it is stand alone. For example, the sketch you need mention, okay, here is what evidence, you need to label, you need to put the legend, you need to put the draft size of the crime scene, you need to prepare on that. Okay, the next one, evidence collector. You need to collect all the exhibits relevant to the case after consultation with the CSI team leader. After you tag it out or you flag the potential exhibits, you need to have the consultation with the CSI team leader in terms of, should I collect this? Okay, how to collect this? How to package this? Okay, that is kind of question you need to ask back to your CSI team leader. But you should be your expert to collect the accordingly. Okay, but again, you need to have every time you need to consult with the CSI team leader. Okay, after you already flag the evidence and then you can confirm everything, then you tell you brief your CSI team leader, I will collect your the sample like this, I will package like this. Is that okay? Or maybe if you have some confusion, then you need to ask the CSI team leader, can I collect like this or there is other method? Okay. And then the next one, you need to have the evidence recorder. The evidence recorder is the function is to prepare the evidence log documents, function as the evidence custodians. Okay. If you have short of what we call staff, you have short of staff, so the evidence collector can be the evidence recorder. So evidence recorder need to prepare the evidence log. The evidence log must be very accurate. It need to be very detailed, and also you need to somehow the documentation must be very clear, so that you can present the evidence log at the court without any problem. And you need to also, if as the evidence court recorder, you need to function as the evidence custodian. You need to prevent the evidence to from the other pupils. You are as the custodian, you are as the guide of the evidence. You will not allow anybody else to touch the evidence, especially someone is not related to the crime scene. Okay, the next one we will learn about the responsibilities of the specialists. The first one here is the medical examiners. Medical examiners may be necessary to determine the cause, manner, and time of death when a homicide has occurred. Okay, when there is a homicide, when there is a body, we need to invite the medical examiners to determine the cause, manner, and time of death. Okay, So what is the difference between cause and manner of death? I will leave it as the assignment to you guys. Okay, so please, I will please complete the assignment of the cause and what is the differences between cause and manner of death. The next specialists such as anthropologists, entomologists, forensic scientists, and forensic psychologists may be consulted if the evidence required their expertise. Okay. The other kind of specialists are required when their expertise is required, especially in terms of identification evidence, collection and preservation, forensic analysis, and also expert testimony. So I would like to, yeah, extra point. So here is the function of the forensic specialist. Okay, so this kind of question can be asked. Please state the function of forensic specialists such as anthropologists and blah blah blah. So you need to be able to describe all the first thing. Identification of evidence, since the evidence may require the expertise of evidence. Collection and preservation require expertise as there is some conditions are required for example, biological evidence and also needs special preservation. For forensic analysis, for special kind of evidence, special type of evidence, we require the specialist. For the expert testimony, there is nothing uh, more better compared to specialist testimony. Okay. Next, we will learn about the general flow at the crime scene. Okay. Okay. First responder or IO coordinates and protect the crime scene. IO contacts and brief the Csi Team Leader as specialists. Then preliminary walkthrough by the IO and Csi Team Leader. IO hands over the crime scene to the Csi Team Leader. Csi Team Leader brief the teams and delegate the tasks. And then Csi Team search, tags, document, collect and package the exhibits. Final survey by the Csi teams. Csi hand over crime scene and exhibits to IO. IO release the crime scene. Okay. So, for example, the question appear that, okay, please describe the flow at the crime scene. So you need to somehow understand the flow of the crime scene. Okay, the first thing first responder and IO will be somehow protect the crime scene. Then IO need to contact the crime scene leader to come to the crime scene. After the Csi Team Leader come to the crime scene, IO will brief the Csi Team Leader. Okay, then only then the Csi Team Leader and the IO will somehow enter the crime scene and perform the preliminary walkthrough. During the preliminary walkthrough, then the IO will further brief the Csi Team Leader. After that, the IO will hand over the crime scene to the Csi Team Leader after the preliminary work. And then the Csi Team Leader with the idea in his head will brief the team. How about the search pattern? How about the collection techniques and what and so forth and so on? And then he or she need to delegate the task appropriately. Okay, if he required additional of officers, so he need to contact the HQ. Okay, then CSI team will conduct the search, tagging, documenting, collects and packaging the exhibits. Okay, after everything has been collected and packaged, and then the CSI will do the final survey on the crime scene, because this will challenge your competency. If suddenly you need to come again, and if it's happened that you already hand over the crime scene to the IO, but suddenly tomorrow you say that you forgot something, you need to enter the crime scene again, so there will be a trouble. Because in court, if you are doing that, so it will challenge your competency. the lawyer can challenge your competency. If you say, oh, you are not competent enough, how you can be a CSI team? If there is mistake, so how you can sure that you are not perform the other mistake to the exhibits? So you need to make it thoroughly. You need to make everything carefully. Okay. And then after the final survey has been done, there's nothing left. You need to make sure everything is okay. Then after that, the CSI team leader will hand over back the crime scene exhibit to the IO. Okay. The IO, the function of IO, just not just release the crime scene. It is the responsibility to the IO need to confirm everything is okay. After that, the IO will release the crime scene. If the IO release the crime scene without confirming everything, so if happen tomorrow, he need to come again and open the crime scene again. So later in the court, also the credibility of the IO can be challenged. So this is the general flow. You need to imagine yourself at the crime scene. Okay, for example, you're at the crime scene, so you need to somehow who want to protect the crime scene. So you need to have the first responder. So if you have the first responder, who will initiate the crime scene? So you need to have the IO. Okay, if you have the IO already, okay, who will perform the everything, contacting, packaging, everything? So you need to have the CSI. So you need to have when the CSI came. So you need to brief the CSI team leader. Okay, after that you need to hand over to CSI team leader. As the CSI team leader, you need to imagine yourself to somehow control the crime scene. You need to somehow to manage the crime scene properly. So you need to decide the search pattern, how to collect everything, and then you need to delegate the task. During the process, you need to perform you need to perform the search, tag, collect, and packaging. After that, you need to perform the final survey. After everything is okay, as the CSI team leader, then you hand over the crime scene to the IO. After the IO receive, then after IO already confirming everything is okay, then only then IO can release the crime scene. Okay. So you need to understand the flow by heart. Okay, let's look at the process of the crime scene investigation. There are 11 stages of crime scene search. Okay, the first one is to approach the scene. The second one is to secure and protect. The third one to initiate a preliminary survey. Number 4, to conduct a detailed search. Number 5, to evaluate document blah 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 and physical evidence found. Sorry, it's my habit. It's my bad habit. Sorry. Number 6, to prepare a narrative description by CSI team leader. After that, the photograph the scene by the photograph. Prepare a sketch by a sketcher. Record and collect the physical evidence by the evidence collector and or evidence recorder. And then after everything, conduct the final survey and release the crime scene. In the 11th stage of crime scene search, we only focus on the crime scene only, not outside of the crime scene job scope. Okay, the first, when you approach the crime scene, be alert all forms of physical evidence. Make pertinent notes of the concerning observation. Be in the frame of mind to take control. Absolutely consider personal safety. Consider all resources needed for processing the scene. Okay, you need, the first thing first, you need to alert all forms of the physical evidence because you don't want to contaminate the evidence. Okay, make pertinent notes concerning the observation. So you know that you cannot remember everything. So you need to make notes. For example, the evidence one, the potential evidence is at there and there. So you don't want somebody contaminating the evidence. You don't want the evidence can be misplaced or miscollected. Be in the frame of mind to take control. So you need to be in mind to take control of the crime scene. So when you have the mind to take control of the crime scene, you can secure the crime scene later on. So you need to have mind, okay, how far should I secure the crime scene? Okay, if the crime scene is actually accessible to the public, so how I can prevent the crime scene from the public can contaminating the crime scene. And then you need to absolutely consider a personal safety. So you need to watch out if there is the crime scene is kind of dangerous or not. Okay, where if there is situation when the structure of the crime scene is not stable. So you need to absolutely consider the personal safety. So you can somehow plan a proper approach of the crime scene. Then you need to consider all resources needed for processing the scene. Okay, you need to utilize the one you have at that come with you. If let's say for example you don't have an enough members of the crime scene investigation team, you can ask the HQ to lend you the added resources. But you need to use the all resources optimally. Alright, the next process of crime scene investigation is to secure and protect the scene. Okay. After you already approach the scene, you need to keep in mind you need to secure and protect the scene from anything that can contaminate the crime scene or can somehow destroy the evidence or can somehow disturb the integrity of the evidence. Okay, that's the thing that you need to keep in mind, even though it's just a starting process, but it will somehow very important in order to secure the integrity of the evidence. So what you need to do, first thing first, to take the aggressive control upon the arrival. So if you find anybody that is not related to the crime scene, you need to chase them out. You need to cordon the area and take control of everything. Then you need to determine the extent of the scene protection upon the arrival. If, for example, you believe that the cordon area is not enough to protect the crime scene, you need to extend your protection or you need to extend the cordon. Then you need to check for adequate scene security. If the area of the crime scene is too large, you believe that a single person will not be able to secure the crime scene. So you need to contact the police department and send another security or another police officer to secure the crime scene. Then after that, you need to obtain all information possible regarding the original of the crime scene. You need to obtain information, original condition of the crime scene. For example, the crime scene happened to the room. Everything already somehow changed in the location. So you need to find the original condition of the crime scene in order to help in solving the crime. For example, in the robbery case, where everything is somehow not in their place. So you need to ask to the owner, where is the original condition? So you can somehow expect what is the changes has took place. So you can find the possible evidence at certain place. For example, okay, you believe that the wardrobe is already being moved. So you can suspect, oh, there must be some kind of trace evidence at the wardrobe. For example, fingerprints. Maybe a part of fiber come from the perpetrator clothes. Okay, that kind of the example. Then you need to appoint one individual as person in charge. Okay, let's say for example, okay, as the investigating officer, your job is not just only to be at the crime scene all the times. Okay, sometimes you need, after you leave the crime scene to the CSI, you need to go somewhere. You need to perform the call search. So to secure the crime scene, you need to appoint one individual as person in charge. You need to somehow appoint another police officer to somehow protect the crime scene. Meanwhile, you're doing the call search. Okay, that is among the responsibilities or the process of secure and protect crime scene. Then, person in charge has final decision and resolution making the authority who are able to enter the crime scene or who are not able to enter the crime scene. Take an extensive notes. Do not rely on your memory. It's already explained before this. You cannot rely on your memories if you don't want anything being misplaced or you don't want anything can be challenged their integrity. So you need to take the extensive notes. Then you need to record all the entries and exits from the scene. Keep the unauthorized personnel out. Okay, record all entries and exits from the scene. This means that whoever came into the crime scene, you need to collect the details of the person. And any unauthorized personnel must be prevented from entering the crime scene, regardless what kind of position, even he is a prime minister or he is a king of the country. You need to keep the unauthorized personnel out from the crime scene. Okay, we have photo here. Okay, if we see the picture here, I believe okay, maybe is kind of crime scene. Okay, if you look over here, there's so many officers outside of the crime scene. It's okay, it's officers, so we will not worry too much. But let's look at the figure below here. What is wrong with this? Okay, if you see, the cordon area is just the division between the cordon area and also the public person. And the public and the evidence is not, the gap is not that great. So what happen is, anytime if the criminal in there, if the person is not criminal also, they can accidentally or intentionally can destroy the evidence because the evidence is very near to them. So you need to extend the protection. Okay, here they assign 2%. Okay, here is very good cordon, so there's some spaces between cordon area and also evidences lah. Okay, so this is very good one. Here is not a good one. Okay, so you need to assign a police officers to secure the crime scene. Okay, I think here is for training. I'm not really sure because too many person, but of course only a limited personnel are allowed to enter the crime scene. Everybody else who are not related directly, so you need to keep them out. Okay, because the more people inside the crime scene, the more mistake will be there. Okay, even you just need the optimum number of team members of CSI to perform the crime scene investigation. Don't have too much team member. If you have too much team member, please assign them to do other things. Maybe you can assign them as the personal recorder outside of the crime scene perimeter, or you assign them as the transporter that transfer the item from your vehicle to the crime scene. Okay, or they just somebody else to take care of the crime scene apparatus. So you need to somehow don't put too much members in a crime scene. Don't make it too crowded. Okay, the next process is the initiate preliminary survey. Was done by the crime scene investigation leader and also the investigating officer. The survey is the organizational stage to plan the entire search. This is why the preliminary survey is required. Without the initial preliminary survey, you will not be able to stage the plan properly. A cautious walkthrough of the scene is required. Determine the safe route. Okay, when you entering the crime scene, you need to perform a cautious walkthrough. You cannot just relentlessly come into the crime scene without give a great care of walkthrough. You need to determine the safe route without disturbing any kind of the potential physical evidence. Number 3, acquire preliminary photograph. So you need to bring photographer with you. The function of the photographer after he took the crime scene from the outside perimeter of the crime scene, he need to take the pictures from the center of the crime scene. Okay. Then number 4, identify the extent of the search area. If you believe that the search area is not wide enough, you have the power to expand the cordon area. You have the power to extend the search area. As the Csi Team Leader, you have the power because you don't want to misplace everything. You don't want to misplace the important evidence. That's why you have the power to extend the search area. Then you need to have your plan in mind to organize methods and procedures needed to process and search the scenes. You need to you need to lay out the plan, organize methods and procedures. If you don't do that, I believe everything will not be in place. Okay, something can be missing. Then you need to determine personnel and equipment needs to make specific assignment. For example, during the CSI, you encounter entomological evidence. So you need the advice from the specific specialist. If you are require special personnel, then you ask from the IO to contact that specific personnel. If, for example, the evidence is located at the tunnel, so you don't have the kind of equipment to collect the evidence. So you need to somehow keep in mind and make the arrangement for the special equipment. So you need to somehow just allocate what kind of the right equipment for the right crime scene. You don't want to bring everything into the crime scene. The more apparatus you bring the crime scene that you are not required, it will be a potential uh, it will be a potential thing to somehow to disturb your evidence later on. So you need just bring just nice. Number 7, identify and protect transient physical evidence. Okay, during the preliminary survey, okay, you need to somehow whatever visible physical evidence you need to flag it first. You need to tag it first without labeling. Okay, you just tag it first so the crime scene can be protected. So the physical evidence will not be somehow stumped by your team member later on. Then you need to develop a general theory of the crime. Either the crime is really a homicide or not, or is the crime is a robbery or not. Or you need to know have some basic flows of the crime. For example, from the current evidence, where is the evidence come from, or maybe you see the blood trail. Okay, you can somehow have the idea in mind where is the suspect or victims come from. So from the general theory of the crime, you can make the search more effectively. Then number 9, make the extensive notes to document scene physical and environmental condition, assignment, and the movement of personnel. So that's why you need the narrative description. Either you use the sound recorder or you can write in your notes extensively. Okay, here is another example of pictures. See, if you see here, each kind actually a good cordon actually. When you have the spaces of the cordon is very large in between of cordon area and also the victims, but there is too many publics over there. So you need to control them. So you need to assign somebody so they don't come near to the cordon area. From what we have seen here, I believe there are some spaces around them, but the cordon area, the cordon thingy about here is not very good. Somebody can pass through. Okay, so if you perform things, then you work here. Maybe the CSI team leader, here's the IO, so they discuss together, get the information whatever given by the IO. Okay, maybe here is the photographer or the note taker bring by the CSI team leader. I'm not really sure. Okay, from there you can organize whatever kind of plan you want to do. What kind of search pattern? For example, here is the outside outdoor area. It's very large. Maybe you need to suggest a proper search pattern, and then you need to find the proper equipment or the right personnel. Or for example, here we have the murdered, maybe the suicide. They don't really know, but the burn disease. Okay, so you need to somehow have the medical examiners or forensic pathologists came to somehow identify the manner of death. Okay, then from the condition of the crime scene, it can be suggested that you can somehow need to generate a theory of crime. Either is it a suicide by burn himself or somebody burn him. So you need to have the idea what kind of the next evidence can be obtained. For example, you need to find the can of gasoline, for example, or the lighter to burn the body. You need have the idea in mind. Okay, that is kind of thing you need to have. Okay, on the next picture here, okay, here is the crime scene investigation. Here is the crime scene. Okay, here is the safe route made by the Csi Team Leader to the crime scene. So he asks the personnel only to use this kind of road. So make sure you just use one kind of enter and exit route for all of your personnel. Don't make them enter from different road. Okay, because we don't want them to somehow mess with the potential evidence. So you need to make a safe road. Okay. From here, if we can see the CSI team leader during preliminary walkthrough is already pre-label the evidence. Pre-label the transient or visible evidence. So we can protect the evidence. Okay. Let's say if the crime scene happened during raining. So what you need to secure? Okay. So if that happen during rainy day, you cannot somehow follow the procedure exactly. You cannot somehow just do everything followed by the books. So what everything you need to keep in mind is protect the evidence first. The most important thing is the biological evidence and also trace evidence. Whatever thing you can have, you collect first. Don't wait for raining to stop. Don't mind if you will not be able to take the pictures of everything. Okay, so you can just put back in the location again and then took the picture later. The most important thing, whatever it is, we want to protect the evidence. Okay, nothing you can do much if the condition is like this. Okay, but whatever it is, you need to keep in mind, you need to protect the evidence first, especially on the biological evidence. Okay, after everything already come, the rain is stopped, then you can start to work again. Okay, then you can locate back again the location of the evidence and you can put the label there. But wherever it is, you need to protect the evidence. In the next process of crime scene investigation search is they conduct a detailed search. After you have done the preliminary survey and you have plan in mind, then you need to use a specialized search pattern. We will go into details in next few chapters. Okay, you can use a few kinds of search pattern. You can use singularly or you can use mix of search patterns. But you need to tailor the search methods depending on the crime scene, location and situation. And then you need to conduct the search in general manner and work to the specifics regarding the evidence item. What is mean by work to the specifics? It mean that you need to focus until, for example, you found the blood on the surface of the carpet. Okay, so you need to somehow have in mind where is the blood come from. So you need to make sure that the finding of the work of the collection of the search must become specific. For example, you suspected that the blood come from the victim, so you need to somehow trace back the evidence to the victim. For example, you in the crime scene search, in the crime scene there was a victim that has been shot, so you need to keep in mind there must be a potential evidence of the bullet casing. So you need to work to the specific. The next process of the conduct of a detailed search is you need to flag or pre-tag the found evidence. Okay. Remember, you need to flag or pre-tag the found evidence if you don't want to, accidentally stand on the evidence. You don't want to do that, or you don't want to accidentally mess with your evidence. You don't want to do that. So you need to flag or protect. Just you can flag by using the blank label also can, or you can use any kind of number, because you can sort out the number later on. Next one, you need to evaluate and document the evidence from. Okay, from the preliminary survey, you need to determine what evidence is likely to be present. Okay, for example, in the Aston cases, what kind of the evidence can become a potential evidence? For example, you need to have in mind, maybe you need to find a can of gasoline, for example, or fragments of glass of Molotov cocktail, for example. That is kind of the idea in mind you need to have. So that's why you need to concentrate on the most transient evidence and work to the least transient forms of this material. What is meant by the most transient evidence is the one that is visible to you the most, or the easily accessible to you. For example, in case of the shooting and murder, and then you found the bullet hole in front of the wardrobe. So you need to perform the evidence tagging and collection at the surface of the wardrobe before you search the bullet inside the wardrobe. Okay, that is kind of thing. Or maybe you have the victim laying on the ground, so you need to look first on the upper side of the victim before you look below to the below side of the victim. So you need to work from the most transient or most visible or accessible to you first before you work to the least transient. Focus first on the easily accessible area in the open view and progress eventually to possible out of view location. Look for purposely hidden items. For example, the murders involve the living room and also the kitchen. So you need to work from the kitchen, from the living room first, and then slowly go to the kitchen. So you don't want to work vice versa. You need to work from the more easily accessible area. So you need to do like that. Number 4, consider whether the evidence appears to have been moved unintentionally. Okay, if the evidence moved accidentally, so you need to observe the evidence. Okay, either somebody already tampered with the evidence. You need to consider if the evidence have been moved unintentionally, especially in the suicide case. Okay, for example, usually in a suicide case, the gun should be in the hand of the victim, but you need to look at the hand of victim, the position of the gun, is the correct position or not? Is the kind of thing you need to consider. Okay. Number 5, evaluate whether or not the scene and the evidence appear intentionally contrived. What is meant by intentionally contrived? That is, it has been done deliberately. If the scene or the evidence there appears deliberately. Okay. For example, I kill Shamsul. Okay, I kill Shamsul, but I deliberately put the evidence that can somehow blame Hassan. Okay, so you need to evaluate that kind of evidence, that kind of suspicious evidence. Okay, either it is naturally be there or just deliberately be there. Okay, it's not naturally should be there, for example. Okay. Number 6, label tagging the pre-tag flag evidence found appropriately. Okay, after you do the detailed search, you already pre-tag of label the evidence. But after you have evaluating the document and evidence found, then you can label it again accordingly. So you can have a proper label. If you're not the proper label like this, then suddenly at the center you have number 1, number 2, but suddenly at your side you found another kind of evidence, it will be number 10. So it will not be nice. It will somehow challenge your integrity during the court session or during the testimony. So pre-tag first, and then you put the label accordingly. So you can sort it out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until what kind of number nicely. So your integrity, the integrity of you, the what we call as the competency of you will be well recognized. Okay, here is some of the how you evaluate and document the evidence. From the footprints, it can be used for the identifications. It can be somehow give the idea to you how many number of persons can be involved. It can give to you the direction of the movement. It can somehow help you in the reconstruction, and from there you can somehow need have the idea to take the sample for DNA profiling. Okay. Imagine with this kind of just one kind of the evidence, you can have so many things, so many informations you can use. In these footprints, you can use for identifications. You can somehow guess how many person involved. You can somehow suggest the direction of movement. You can somehow help in the reconstruction of the scene. For example, if the murder come uh, from the parents' room to the child room, or maybe it come from the daughter room to the parents' room, we can somehow reconstruct that. And then of course you can use for biological evidence, use supposedly to take for DNA profiling, especially it's involve blood. For the label and tagging, no fixed methods. Depends what kind of tagging style you want to use. For example, inside the house you want HH, H1, H2 for house. Outside the house you can use U1, U2, or O1, O2. It means outside 1, outside 2. As long you have the specific in mind what kind of the label and tagging you want to use. Okay, it doesn't really matter, but you need to sort it out very nicely. For example, here we do A, B. Where is A? Looks here, if we not properly tag the sample, it will be not nicely arranged. For example, here A 1, D, F, E. Where is B, C, D, E, and F? So that's why you need to pre-tag and then you put the label again accordingly. If you're asking me how to do the label, I will put the label, any kind of the label, as long I know the location of evidence. Then I will label again according to the flow of the crime. For example, from the center of the crime, from the victims, I put A. Little bit outside, B. Father, C. D, E, F, G, H, and I. That is kind of pattern that I would like to use. Sort by the importance of evidence you can suggest. Okay, the next process is to prepare a narrative description. Narrative description is the description of the entire crime scene investigation. The purpose of this step is to provide a running narrative of the conditions of the crime scene. Consider what should be present at the scene and is not observed and what is out of place. For example, you found the victims but something is not there. Where is the purse of the victim? For example, the victim lost one of his hands, or where is the pulse of the victim? You should describe all that. Okay, you need to represent a scene in general to specific. Consider situational factors as well, including the lights is on off, heat is on off, newspaper on driveway, house, red spool, open or shut. For example, you come to the crime scene, you need to prepare a narrative description. Okay, the house, the door is already open. Okay, the light is already on. The condition inside of the house is relatively humid. Okay, let's say for example. Okay, or even the smell. There is pungent smell inside the house. Okay, let's kind of example. You need to somehow put a narrative description from the general to specific. For example, you can observe at this switch of the light, you have the trace of blood. Okay, or maybe at the victim trousers, you see a chips of pain. Okay, you need to be from general to very specific. For example, from general specific. Okay, the victim wore the blue trousers. Okay, the blue trousers made of nylon. The brand of the trousers is white and white and white. Okay, the brand is white, white and white. That's kind of example. But of course, you should not go that specific for the victims. But for example, you have the gun. You found a gun. Okay, you found a gun. What kind of gun? Okay, what is the size of the bullet, for example? What is the color of gun? You need from very general to the specific. The narrative must address the question of who, what, when, where, how, and why. Okay, who is that? Who is the suspect? What is actually happened? When it happened? Where it happened? Okay, how it happened? And why it happened? Okay, maybe in case of murder, so who is the victim? Afiq. Who is killed the person? Hassan. Okay, for example, Hassan killed me. So what kind of the murder equipment? Maybe Hassan stabbed me. So when is the maybe last night from the state of the body, so you suggest, or maybe last night. So where is the location of the murder? Is upstairs, in the room, or in the toilet? How? Stab on the stomach or the stab on my neck, for example. Why? Okay, why it's happened? Maybe you need to somehow find the suspect and disclose the motive. Maybe because of the revenge and what and so forth. Okay. Method of narratives can be written, can be audio, or can be video. The next one is scene photography. Okay. Photograph the scene completely to include the points of entry exit. Okay, the possible points of entry exit to the crime scene. Then you need to take the surrounding area, including the neighborhood, where you can tell that the crime scene is there. Okay. Then the photograph need to take the eye at eye level. Okay, at eye level. Don't using other kind of lens. For example, don't use micro lens, don't use zoom lens. Just use the basic lens, 35 mm. That is the very good eye level photograph. Photograph supplements, sketches, and notes. They do not stand alone. Okay, you need to somehow work together with the sketches, or you need to somehow work together with note takers, because photograph cannot stand alone. From the photograph, you will not be able to tell the size. So from the notes, you can somehow tell what kind of size, for example. Okay. Photograph cannot do that. It needs to be together with the notes and sketches. Okay. Photograph cannot tell the specific location, but from the sketches, we can put the specific distance and location of the evidence. That's why photograph cannot be standalone. It should be somehow complementary with the sketches and notes. So when you come to the crime scene, you need to photograph the scene as soon as possible. You need to have the photo log for the documentation. Utilize various views of the scene. Overall, medium, close up, with and without scale. Okay. For every evidence, you need to have a far one. Okay, overall. Then you need to have a closer photograph. The medium. Then you need to have a close up. When you're doing the close up, you need to have a with and without scales. So you have, for every evidence, you have 4 photograph. Okay, you need to keep in mind. You have the far one, medium, close up with scale, close up without scale. You need to have four photograph for each evidence. And then after you collect all the evidence, you need to photograph all the evidence prior to collection. Before you collect and put in the box, you need to photograph all the evidence. Okay. After that, only you can collect. Okay, here he is how we're supposed to take the photograph, but it's not really correct as well. The first, we need to have the long range photograph, we need to have the medium range, we need to have the close photograph. What is the mistake in the long range photograph? You don't have the label, so you need to put the label. For the close up, okay, if you see here, okay, it's not really correct, so you need to, this we cannot consider with scale actually, so we can consider this as the close up photograph without scale. So you need to put the scales near to the evidence, okay, but make sure it's not direct contact to the evidence. Then you need to take for the photograph. So the scale here cannot be applicable to this evidence because it's a little bit far. So we can consider this as the close-up photograph without the scale. So you need to have another photograph, zoom in with scales. Okay, now we have something with scales, but something is wrong, right? Okay. Right. What is the wrong with these figures? Okay, I will put this as the assignment, as the home task, so you need to answer what is wrong with these figures. It's very easy actually. The next process is diagram or sketching. It is a permanent record of items, establishes distance, size, and their relationships. Okay, as I mentioned before, photograph alone cannot establish the distance, size, and their relationships. But through the sketch, we can establish the distance. We can establish the size of the crime scene. From the photograph, it's not possible to do that. But from the diagrams, we can somehow establish the distance and size. And then in the diagram and sketch, we can also the relationships. For example, the trail of blood. Okay, for example, where is the blood move from left to the right, from downstairs to upstairs? We can do that. Rough sketch may be drawn at the scene, never to scale, but must be written. Okay, for the sketch, there are rough sketch and utilized using computers. But at the crime scene, you need to do the rough sketch. Okay, the rough sketch is the important one because the rough sketch is the one that will be looked in the court, or can be submitted as the, or can be accepted as the exhibit. Alright. And the rough sketch must be written. Okay, written as such. You cannot add later. So whatever it is, you need to finish your diagram or sketch at the crime scene. Because your rough sketch is the one can be accepted as the exhibit at the court instead of the one you draft using computer skills. The one you draft using computer skills will only assist on the investigation, but the one that will be accepted is the rough sketch. If your rough sketch is not correct, then they will doubt your drafting using computer. So here is the rough sketch of a crime. So it's mentioned the location, but something is missing. Okay, in the rough sketch, you need to mention the location. So something wrong with this evidence, this sketch. So this is not a correct sketch. Okay, don't worry. For the sketch, we will learn to detail in the next few chapters. Okay, but here I just want you to know the sketch. So where is it? So right now just telling you the location, but that doesn't tell you the distance. So it's not really correct. But I'm not really sure what is 1, 2, 3, and 10. Maybe they has another kind of separated sheets to elaborate more. Not sure. Okay, here is the one that drafted using the computer. Okay. The next process is record and collect physical evidence. After you have photographed the evidence, after you have already sketched the evidence, then only you perform the record and collect the physical file. Okay. Before you collect the physical evidence, you need to do the note-taking description of the evidence. Okay, for example, what is the color, what type of it, what kind of brand, how how long is it, how wide is it. So you need to take the note-taking description very extensively. Mark the evidence location in diagram sketch. Complete the evidence log with the appropriate notation for each item of evidence. For example, A1 for a bullet. Okay, size of bullet, location of bullet. Okay, for example, that kind of example. Have at least 2 persons to observe the evidence in place before collection. Okay, so you need someone to watch over you. Observe the evidence being collected. Select the proper packaging material. Mark the evidence directly or mark the evidence containers for identification. So, have 2 persons to do this. If 1 person only, so the chance of misplaced or misinformation will be higher. So please at least 2 persons. Here is the kind of the evidence log. Okay, so you have the evidence number, description, collected or discovered by, time and date. You need to have the information as well because you need to prove to court the evidence log belong to which case. So you need to include the Csi team name, case number, type of offense and victim. So you need to link your evidence log and sheet to the case as well. Same goes to the here. Same goes to the sketches. For the sketch, you need to also have the detail of the date. Of course, you need to have the signature. Okay. While collecting the physical evidence, ensure no cross-contamination. All tools used must be clean. Have 1 person as evidence custodian. Okay, so you need somebody to to somehow avoid anybody else to come in contact with the evidence. Seal the evidence containers at the scene. Never seals at the laboratory. You don't want any cross-contamination during transportation. Obtain the control sample where needed. For example, you found the shoes but with the foreign soil. So you look at the crime scene, you look you observe there is different soil from the crime scene. So you need to collect the soil from the crime scene to as the comparison. Okay. Let's say for example in the arson cases, so you need to collect the carpet that burned and also the carpet that is not burned. So we want to know if the composition, is there any extra of the chemicals of the burn one and also not the burn one. For example, in the burn one you see the extra composition of gasoline, so it can suggested that the crime has happened. At the end, you need to check all logs evidence for accuracy. If not, you need to correct it or you need to re-prepare the evidence log. But everything need to be done at the crime scene. Okay, you cannot doing it at the laboratory. Okay. After you already record, documenting and collect all the evidences, then you conduct the final survey. So it is like a critical review of all aspects of the search. Okay. Discuss the search jointly with all personnel for completeness. You need to discuss with them either they already do their parts or any miscollection, for example. Double check the documentation to detect inadvertent errors or omissions. Okay, so you need to double check the documentation. If the documentation is already submitted and you have the inadvertent errors, yeah, it will test your integrity in court, and maybe the evidence will not be accepted. So documentation is the one of the most important things, one of the main factors. You make it wrong with documentation, you will somehow destroy the integrity of the evidence. Okay, then you need to take the exit photograph. Ensure all the evidence is accounted. You can omit this one because it's not part of the conduct of the survey. Ensure all the evidence is accounted before departing and the scene is secure. Okay, make sure before you depart from the crime scene, make sure all the evidences is secure and you have the proper document. And then ensure you have all your equipment prior to departing. You don't want to lose anything. Okay, make sure that nothing has been overlooked. Yeah, that's the thing. Before you leave the scene, make sure you have collected everything you could help to solve the case. Okay, don't take too much, but you need to select or collect the potential evidence wisely. Okay, you need to have the expertise on that. Only one chance to do it right. Of course, you can come again. But again, if you do that, your integrity, your competency will be somehow challenged in the court. So, if you do that, probably the evidence will not be accepted. So, somebody can ask, what happen if accidentally we need to go again? Okay, you need to do, if you are really need, so you need just go again and collect the evidence, but the probability for the evidence can be accepted will be low. Okay, the end, you will release the crime scene. Okay, before you release the crime scene, ensure you have utilized all the appropriate resources such as a blood specialist, bomb technician, forensic anthropologist, behavioral scientist, etc. to review the scene. If it's required, for example, for bombing gases, of course, you need to find the bombing specialist. If it's involved the anthropological specimen, don't do it by yourself. So you need to utilize the forensic anthropologist. If not, the integrity of the competency of the crime scene search technique will be challenged. So you need to do this. Okay. Then, before release the crime scene, ensure personnel has personal protective equipment, treat of blood and bloody fluid as infectious, view crime scene as source of contamination, never place hands where you cannot see, do not eat, drink or smoke at crime scene. Actually, it's part of the precaution. Actually, it's not for release of the crime scene, but for the whole crime scene, this the precaution you need to do. You need to ensure that all the personnel has personal protective equipments. Okay, at least you need to wear a double glove. Why you need to have a double glove? Because if you have the external layer of glove is already straight out, so you can replace a new one. So at least if example you handle one biological evidence, you need to throw out the external layer of the glove so you can add another one. Okay, so it will somehow we can avoid the contamination as much as possible. We can somehow preserve the integrity, the evidence as much as possible. Treat all blood and bloody fluid as infectious. Never come into contact. You never know if they have HIV or not. View crime scene as source of contamination. So you should give a very good, a proper precaution when entering the crime scene. Never place hands where you cannot see. If you don't want to somehow destroy the evidence. Do not eat, drink, or smoke at crime scene. It will somehow become the addition of contamination. So here is the contamination control techniques. Don't touch face with contaminated glove, because from your spit you will give extra DNA for evidence collection. Double glove and change glove frequently, especially when handling the biological evidences. So each biological evidences you should replace the external layer of glove, because you don't want to cross contamination to occur. Use shoe covers and remove when you leave the crime scene. Okay. Avoid using same personnel to search crime scene and subject cars or home. Okay. So you need to have different personnels. You need to assign this personnel focus on the inside of the car, outside of the area. Then you need to have the next person cover the uh, interior of the house. Okay, please avoid. If you have enough personnel, if not, nothing we can do. If you decide to use some personnel, ensure their clothing and shoes are changed. Okay. If you decide to use the same personnel to come into contact with the other location of crime scene, so you need them to change their clothing and shoes, because you don't want they bring the contamination from the for example primary crime scene to secondary crime scene. You don't want to do that. Okay, this is at least that you can do to avoid this thing lah. Okay. Okay, this an example of safety considerations. Wear the shoe covers, because you don't want to bring any kind of external uh, false evidence to the crime scene. For example, the soil from your shoes or the DNA from your feet. You don't want it gets cross contaminate the evidence inside the crime scene. Okay. Another kind of crime scene contamination control technique, collect all trash generated by crime scene team. Do not wear jewelry at the crime scene. No. A big no. Use face mask and eye protection when dealing with body fluids. So please use at least a face mask and glove. Important point for CSI. Sorry, little bit itchy. Record of those who handle the evidence from crime scene to court hearing. So to maintain the chain of custody, you need to record to those for everybody that comes into contact with the evidence. So you need to record until from the crime scene itself. From the chain of custody must be documented from the crime scene until the court hearing. So you need to maintain the chain of custody. Once the chain of custody is broken, the evidence most likely will be rejected. You need to preserve the integrity of sample. You need to avoid contamination. That's why you need to use glove. Okay. You need double layer. Okay, like for example, you need have a you need to avoid tampering. So that's why we don't want you to use the same glove to different biological evidence. We don't want you to use same clothes when you analyze you collect the evidence from different location of crime scene. We don't want you to do that, to avoid tampering. Okay. Then of course we need the proper packaging. Proper packaging will protect the evidence. Let's say for example, you have knife. Okay, you have knife. So you need to lock the knife inside the box. You cannot just simply put in the plastic packaging. If the knife is put in the plastic packaging load, what happen is it will somehow maybe lost during the transportation. We don't want to do that. Okay, so this is just giving you the idea of the question. Okay, uh, it can ask you how you can preserve the integrity of the sample. Okay, you need to discuss. Okay, so you need to discuss the 3 points: to avoid contamination, to avoid tampering, proper packaging. How to avoid contamination, how to avoid tampering, how to make a proper packaging. That is kind of the question can be asked. Okay. Okay, the next one we will look into the securing and collecting exhibits. Okay, how we can secure and collect the exhibits. Okay, just not collect, but we want to secure the exhibit. Okay, all evidences needs to be properly packaged, sealed, and labeled. Okay, we need to be properly packaged so we don't destroy or lost the evidence. So we need to seal so we will not lose the evidence. When we seal, it's actually when the chain of custody begin. And then we need to have a proper label. Okay, the label, that is the thing that we can relate to the victim and the case. And at label itself, we can find the chain of custody. Okay. To secure, liquids and essence need to be stored in airtight and unbreakable containers. Okay. Liquid and essence are stored in airtight, unbreakable containers. Okay. Why we need to airtight? Because we don't want any of our analyte of interest lost in the air. Okay. Unbreakable containers mean very sturdy. We don't want during the transportation is broken. Another points here, for every liquids we cannot fill more than 1/3 of the container. Why is that? Because if we put then 1/3 of the container, there is some situation where the liquid can be expanding, so the container can break. That's why another point here, you should add, we need to keep the liquid 1/3 of the container. Most biological evidence is stored in breathable containers, so the evidence can dry out, reducing the chance of mold contamination. So most biological evidence need to store in breathable containers. For example, paper envelope. So you need to use that. We cannot use plastic container for biological evidence. First, when you encountered the biological evidence that is moist, you need to allow to air dry. For example, you swab for blood. You cannot directly put the blood swab into the container of packaging. You need to allow it to dry. If you do that, the chance of mold growth will be higher and will destroy the DNA values of the evidence. Okay, that's why you need to dry the evidence, biological evidence. The binder can then be placed in a plastic or paper container. This outer container is then sealed with the tape and labeled with the signature of the collector written across the tape. So when you put the biological evidence, okay, the evidence that contact with biological evidence, so you can put in the binder, so the paper binder will somehow can absorb the extra moisture, and then you can put in the plastic or paper container. Again, in the container you need to seal. Okay, you don't want to lose anything, and then you label with the signature of the collector, because we want to maintain the chain of custody. Or during the testimony, you will be asked either you are the one that collect the evidence. Okay, we want to maintain the integrity of the evidence as much as we can. For packaging the exhibits, the size of the bindle depends on the size of the evidence. What is bindle? Okay, this is bindle. Before we go further, this is bindle. This is bindle. If the evidence is small, the bindle can be constructed from a sheet of paper. You can use A4 paper as the bindle if the evidence is small. If the evidence is large, the bindle might be constructed from a large sheet of wrapping paper. If your evidence is large, you need to use a wrapping paper to somehow wrap the evidence. If a wet object to be packaged is large, it should be dry first and placed in paper container and sealed to allow it to further dry. Okay. Again, if you encounter wet object, you need to allow it to dry first. Wet evidence should never be packaged in plastic container while wet. Any DNA present will degenerate and evidence may become moldy and useless. So, if we package the evidence wetly, so what happen? The mold will grow, DNA will degenerate, so the evidence become useless. We don't want to do that. So this kind of the one of the famous example of question. Okay, how to collect and package the biological evidence and discuss the reason of doing that. That's kind of the example. Okay. Okay. Here we have a piece of tissue with blood. Okay, it's kind of not that big evidence, so we can make a paper bindle, half of the wrapping paper, half side of wrapping paper. We fold the bindle like this, tuck the top flap to the bottom. Okay, so in the middle you flap this, and you fold and fold. Okay, and then you secure in bindle in label evidence bag using stick on label. Okay, you put your evidence inside the bag. Make sure the evidence bag have the evidential label. Evidential label must have the necessary information of the evidence. Okay. Place evidence in plastic bags with an insert evidence label. Note that this different evidence source than the bloody class above. Okay, sorry. If required, then you can put in the another plastic bag. Seal and tape the edge of the bagel or of the baggie, or you can seal the envelope here, and then you need to sign across the tape. Okay, across the seal. Okay, it's not really a proper seal. The seal here is not correct. Basically, if you already have the envelope with the chain of custody and evidence information, so they attach, is already okay. Okay, you don't need to use the plastic. Okay, but at the envelope you need to seal all edges, and then the edges, when you insert your evidence, you need to have your signature. The next one we will learn about the chain of custody. And chain of custody and evidence documented label must be attached to the evidence container packaging. Okay. Sorry. So for the chain of custody, the document, tag or label of chain of custody and evidence must be attached to evidence container packaging. So for example, you have the paper envelope. If the evidence information and chain of custody is already printed, it's okay. If not, you need to attach. You need to print separately and attach to the container. Okay. Evidence details include the description of evidence. Okay. Name of suspect, name of victims. If you don't know the name of victim, just John Doe. If you don't know the name of a suspect, you can say the unknown. Okay. Date and time of recovery. We have date and time of recovery. Okay. The signature of any witness present during the collection. Okay. Right now we don't have that. Okay. We don't have that. But at least need to have the signature of the collector. Okay. But theoretically, you need to have the signature of witness. So what you need to do, you use this kind of if you use this kind of evidence chain of custody document, so after the signature of the collector, put at the right side is the another signature of the witness. Okay. The chain of custody, a list of all persons who came into possession of an item evidence. So the chain of custody is already begin with the evidences tag. So it's collected by someone. So that is where the chain of custody begin. Okay. When it pass um, sorry, my nose is little bit itchy. Okay, at the chain of custody, you need to note it down. Receive from who or received by who. For example, you send to the uh, chemist officers. So receive from IO, the name and signature, date, time. By who received the item. For example, the chemist officers. When the evidence returned back to the IO, so it's received from the chemist officers and then received by the IO. Okay, until the end. Okay, that is the kind of process of chain of custody. If the chain of custody is already full, so you need to attach another label of chain of custody. So it must be continuous. Here is the picture. Agency, item number, case number, date of collection, time of collection, specifically for that particular evidence, collected by who, put another signature of the witness. You need to describe the evidence. For example, a white trousers with blood, maybe blood stain. Okay. Put the location of the collection, which is the location of crime scene, type of offense. Okay. The victims, if you don't know John Doe, suspect if you don't know the unknown. So maybe you left it for the IO to fill in the suspect. Okay. For the chain of custody tag, receive from, okay, for example, I'm the IO, I send the evidence to the chemist, so receive from me and received by the chemist officer. When she return back the evidence to me, so received from the chemist and received by me. Okay. Every item removed from the scene and taken to the laboratory must be identified in a way that guarantees its integrity. So every items from the crime scene until it reach to the laboratory must can be identified that can guarantee its integrity. For example, if the evidence is destroyed during the transportation. For example, you collect the blood inside the glass tube, and then, for example, the glass tube break, and then the blood spill. Then the chemist can decline to analyze the evidence. The chemist can decline the evidence because the evidence can no longer be useful. It must have a unique marking that can be used to identify its strain from collection to disposal. Okay, we have some kind of issue here. Okay, the individual who finds evidence marks it for identification and bags the evidence in plastic or paper container. The final container for the evidence is a collection bag which is labeled with the pertinent information. The container is then sealed and the collector's signature is written across the seal edge. If we read this, for example, you find a pair of shoes. Okay. Then you put your signatures on shoes. Then the shoes you put in the container. Okay. Then at the container or at the collection bag, you put the label tag of the evidence and the chain of custody. Then you seal the container and you put the signature of the collectors. Okay. So the other method is you collect the evidence, you put in the container, and then you seal and you put the signature and also the information at the label. So there are two kinds of techniques. Okay. The issue is, because I already mentioned, the issue is, okay, if you put the signature of the collector directly to the evidence, will you know that the signature will not decreasing the evidential values of the evidence if your signature not disturb the integrity of the evidence? For example, you put the signature on shoes where the fingerprint is located. So that is the first issue. Okay, that's why the number 2 option is actually acceptable already, but in Malaysia is still applied. It's still actually it's not applied in Malaysia only, it's still applied widely actually, because we want to know is your sample that you collected during the crime scene investigation. Okay, so that is the issue. So are you agree or not for the marks directly in the evidence or not? Okay, so I will put in the forum, so you need to discuss. Okay, either you agree or not to marks directly to the evidence. Okay, why? You need to explain why if you agree, and why if you disagree. If from my opinion, I prefer the number 2, because all the informations are already labeled, are already attached at the container. Okay, and then your container is already properly sealed. So with that alone, is already maintain the integrity of the evidence. That is from my opinions. Okay, but if you want to perform the number 1, you want to mark directly on the evidence as well, you want to add extra unique signature of yours, you can do that, but you need to do at the location where the probability of the decreasing of evidential value is very minimum. For example, if you want to put the signatures on shoes, don't put the signatures on the uh, on the sole of your shoes. You need to put the signatures inside the shoes, where it will not disturb the shoe prints of the footwear. Okay, that's kind of example. The container is given to the next person responsible for its care. The person takes to the lab and sends it over to the technician, who opens the package for examination and location other than the seal edge don't take completely. Okay, I need to show you this, but okay, okay, okay. Let's say there is the document. Okay, there is this is the container. Sorry, I should make it bigger. Sorry. Let me pause for a while. Okay. Sorry, I don't have enough equipment. Okay. Let's say this is your evidence. Okay, here is your envelope. I'm sorry, I don't have the proper envelopes. So you put your envelope, your evidence inside the envelopes, and then using this tape, you need to seal all edges. You need to seal all edges. You need to seal all edges. example, sorry, where is it? It will take some time, sorry. Okay, you seal. Okay, you need to seal all edges, sorry, because it's a bit messy. You need to seal properly all edges, and then at the front you need to have your information, evidential contact, evidence information, and also chain of custody attached. Okay, as the collector, where is the entry where you put your evidence, you need to put your signature. For example, here is the flap where I put the evidence just now, so you need to write your signature across the tape and also the packaging. So you need to put the date as well. Okay, use pen, don't use marker pen. Marker pen we use a lot of spaces. So when it reach to the forensic laboratory, for example, and received by the other technician, so they need to open from the other side, from this side. They need to cut the edges. Okay, but don't tear completely. You need to tear until about left it some spaces, so it will not tear completely, so that they can take the sample, analyze, and put again back in the container and receive the packaging. If I'm the technician, I will open like this, don't tear it completely. After I finish the analysis, I put back the evidence over here, and then I will reseal. I will receive the envelope. It's not really proper actually. It's very hard to do it not in the proper place, with not a proper packaging. Okay, come on, sorry. So I will reseal. It's not very nice actually, you need to do it nicely. It's not very nice because I want to cut it short. So I will reseal the location where I cut just now, and then I will put my signature as chemist. Need to cross the tape and also the container as well, and put the date 30 December for example, the date of the analysis when you put back the evidence. And then after that only you return this thing to the investigating officers before it will be opened during the court session. Okay, that's it. Okay, again, the container is give to the next person responsible to its care. That person take it to the lab and sends over to the technician, who opens the package for examination at location other than the seal age. So again, I mentioned the collector seal at this site where he put the evidence. So you as the chemist, you need to open from the other side, but please don't tear completely. On completion of the examination, the technician repackage the evidence with its original packaging. Okay, reseal the evidence using the department seal sign. Okay, right now I only just use a normal tape. Okay, for you guys need to have a seal that with the department seal. So for example, from the chemistry department, they have their own seal. So the easy method, you can do the seal without without spending much money on printing. You can just print the logo on piece of paper, use a clear tape, and then you can just put the logo under the clear tape. So it will be your department seal. So then you need to sign. Okay, if requires a new packaging, and signs the chain of custody log attached to the packaging. Okay, so you need to have the another chain of custody into the outer layer of packaging. This process ensures that the evidence has been responsibly handled and it was passed from the crime scene to the courtroom. Okay. Alright, here is the basic flow for the chain of custody. Okay. When the evidence collected, the chain of custody begins. Okay. So we need to be very careful to not tamper with the evidence packaging. And then the evidence collected will reach to the police department property room. Okay. Then it will be taken by the criminal investigator or investigating officer and taken into the crime lab. And at the crime lab, it will store in the evidence storage at the laboratory before be analysed by scientists. After the analysis has been done by the scientists, the evidence will be stored at the lab, and then the evidence will be intake at the crime lab before given to the criminal investigator. Then criminal investigator will take the evidence to the police department property room or the storage room of the police department. Okay, then the criminal investigator will bring the evidence to the court. Here is the whole process of the evidence. So first thing, it comes from the crime scene, it goes to the storage room of the police. Then the criminal investigator will bring to the lab. Okay, at the lab, the evidence will store in the lab storage room. Until the analysis has been done, it will be kept in the lab storage room. Then evidence will be taken from the crime lab by the criminal investigator. Criminal investigator bring the evidence to the police storage room. Okay, until the court hearing, where the evidence will be taken by criminal investigator to the court. So if you observe the whole process, the most responsible one is the criminal investigator. Criminal investigator, one that take the evidence from the storage room of the police to the lab. At the lab, scientists control over it. Then the criminal investigator or the IO, investigating officer, will take the evidence from lab to the storage room of the police department. And then again, the investigator responsible to bring the evidence to the court. So less people come into contact to the evidence is much better. So it just between the criminal investigator, forensic laboratory, scientists, and also court. Okay. Alright, we completed the introduction of crime scene investigation. We have learned about the crime scene. We learned about the local exchange principle. We learned about the classification of trace evidence, direct and circumstantial evidence, including the biological and the physical evidence. We have learned the type of professionals at the crime scenes and their responsibilities. We already have learned about the process of crime scene investigation and safety consideration while handling the crime scene. We have learned generally about the collecting and packaging the trace evidence. And at the end, we already learned about how to perform the chain of custody. But for number of 5, 6, and 7, we will learn again into details in the next few chapters. Thank you for everything. I will post the homework in the e-learning. You need to answer it before you get access to the next lectures. Okay. That's it, I think. If you have any question, you can always ask in the WhatsApp group so we can share the information with everybody else.